Music is in revolution. A revolution that signifies change in the way music is written, orchestrated, transcribed, and eventually used by the musician or conductor. Incorporated in the revolution is music of all forms, from classical to jazz to rock to music written for television and film. As in most of today's society, the ubiquitous computer is an integral force in the music revolution. For the next few minutes, we'll focus on some of the artists, composers, transcribers, and computer wizards involved in today's technological changes and the creation and use of software technology that's having a significant impact on music composition. Musicians are noted for sharing new techniques and technologies with their counterparts. One who has become a sounding board for those advances, and a musician himself, is editor-in-chief of Electronic Musician magazine, Craig Anderton.
Notation has been around for quite a while. It is an effective way of presenting ideas. And if you don't know how to use notation, you're sort of at a disadvantage when you're dealing with other musicians.
With an ear to the ever-changing music industry, Anderton is constantly made aware of the strong need for a computerized notation system.
So it'll be a lot easier to learn notation, because whatever you play, you'll be able to see printed out, and you'll say, oh, I see how these chords move, I see how these structures are happening.
As the film and television industry in LA moved to incorporate computer technology into its music scoring process, it drew the likes of composer and music software development specialist Christopher Yavolo.
We have a representation of our musical data which is in notes, and real conventional music notation, it's no coincidence that it's taken 600 years to develop this system. And if we can see our data and our ideas immediately as notation, this is far superior to a list of letters and numbers. It's far superior to a bar graph or piano roll notation, as many sequencers use. It gives us additional feedback in terms of knowing always where we are and being able to hear and see what we have composed.
There are those that have suggested, as computer notation software becomes further developed, transcription skills will become antiquated.
But there are some holes in that reasoning. Number one is that every computer owner knows the value of backing up data. And the ultimate backup in a lot of cases is hard copy, because what happens if the disks get erased or damaged or whatever? It's nice to have a printout somewhere that you can actually look at. Number two is for those who are familiar with sheet music and how to read notation. So it's a useful skill for anybody involved in music. It means you can sort of take music with you wherever you go.
Orion Crawford came to the Hollywood area almost 20 years ago to be a songwriter and composer. Since then, he's become a successful transcriber of film and television scores.
During creative bursts, the music is dynamic and alive, and that can be better represented on a computer monitor than it can on paper. Maybe the best representation for MIDI sequencer data is as music notation on a screen.
In Minneapolis, David Island has established himself as a producer, staff writer, and principal soloist for a major studio. His musical versatility demands the type of instantaneous visual feedback available from the computer's monitor.
I can see visually where my melodies are going, and that's just a different element where before I couldn't see, I can hear them. And my ear would want to go certain places, but visually, as you see the notes going up and down on the staves, it's great to be able to have that instant visual feedback.
In Boston, Harvard grad Jim Romeo is busy composing for television and radio.
I'm going to be playing eighth notes, and I don't want to have two voices, and I want to include ties, and I want to float the quantization to non-timed tuplets, which means that I can swing this, and finale will still notate it correctly.
His interest in software that would allow him to select and edit various instruments into a full score led to his involvement in the creation of a revolutionary new tool for musicians.
For the first time in music history, a composer can sit at a keyboard and improvise with both hands, press a few buttons, and have that music, that improvisation, appear on the screen in perfect musical notation, edit that notation, press a couple other buttons, and hear it played back with full orchestration. That's a significant advance.
Music technology has rapidly advanced since the creation of the Moog synthesizer just years ago. And while many still equate music and technology in electronic terms, the two actually have more of a rich, historic tradition.
Most people don't realize it, but the history of music, in a sense, is the history of technology. When people watch a symphony orchestra, they're seeing a very high-tech musical event. There's millions of dollars of perfectly designed musical instruments. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries. You know, there's scientifically designed acoustic halls. Throughout history, technology has driven the musical arts, and the musical arts have driven technology.
One area where technology is driving the musical arts is in music composition and transcription.
The one thing that a good user interface for a music notation program will do is allow the composer to stay in a creative mode as much of the time as possible.
Often a composer or musician needs to transpose a musical score from one instrument to another.
With MIDI being the way it is, you can transpose, and as I play into the program, it will print it out in that key. So that allows me to communicate with those particular instruments that were hard to, in the past, to transpose for.
The new software can also recall pre-programmed sequences.
Any transcription package that supports the MIDI file spec means that you can import sequences that were generated, you know, say a year ago that met the spec, or that are being generated now, and transcribe those, as opposed to having to start from scratch all over again with the transcription program. I have a friend who's collaborating on a composition with me, and he happens to prefer the Dr. T sequencer, and I think he runs it on the Atari, and I use a sequencer called Mastertrax Pro and run it on the Mac. And they both support the MIDI file spec. Now, normally we couldn't swap disks or anything like that, but what we can do is take that file, post it through the modem or on an electronic mail service, and then he can download it and take that file and import it into his sequencer.
When I emerged from Harvard, it was incredible because the entire industry had been revolutionized. You know, MIDI had been invented and the synthesizer revolution had taken place, but the thing that was striking was the technological advances and how far they had come in such a short amount of time. The tools that were available were profound in their implications for my craft. Flat 12, let's say, you know, where you have both the 12, the fifth and the flat 12. You could
True
get
to
in
form,
here.
the rapid technological advances were paralleled by user expectation.
I'm gonna go in here.
Often, as the technology changed, the needs of those in the electronic music business changed.
A tremendous number of people seem interested in the idea of sort of this dream transcription machine where they play a keyboard and sort of in real time out the other end pop sheet music. When everybody calls up and wants this magical device, I have to tell them that it just doesn't exist. And they're always sort of perplexed as to why. I mean, wouldn't it be simple? You play a C that lasts an eighth note. Can a computer tell that?
Computer software developers have been aggressively seeking that magical transcription device for years. A recent breakthrough software product, Finale, has finally allowed musicians to accurately transcribe their music with a computer.
Optimize it. We want to make sure we get that customer's feedback.
Gary Brunati applies his background to his work with Finale's parent company, Coda Music Software. At the Berklee School of Music, he was both a big band arranger and professor.
It's really the tool we've been looking for many, many years, because when I was a student, I had to sit and hand copy out all these parts and then write out all these scores and literally take, 100 hours writing a score and copying out parts.
One of those most frustrated by the lack of up-to-date notation software was composer, pianist Phil Farrand.
I was immersed in the paper dance that there is with music. You see, in music editing, what happens is an arranger sends you his music on a piece of paper. You take that piece of paper, transfer it to another piece of paper that's known as your music editor score. Then you take that piece of paper and you send it to a typesetter, and he makes the actual folios, which are on paper, which he then sends back to you, and you go to the copier and make 2 pieces of paper off of that so that you can make the corrections on those 2 pieces of paper, and then you send those 2 pieces of paper back to the typesetter. He makes the corrections on the original folios, and then he sends the folios back to you, and then eventually you burn the plates. Well, in the world of computers, this is ridiculous because we have ways of communicating this information.
You have to remember that writing out sheet music is a time-consuming, difficult experience. I mean, it's not anybody's real idea of fun. It's, you have the stereotype of the composer sitting there at the piano with the pen, laboriously working away at the score, and that's, that's pretty close to the truth.
Communication is an area in which Phil Farrand excels. His understanding of the need for practical, usable, and universal music software, and the ability to translate those needs into the creation of new technology, is based in a deep-rooted and committed music background.
I started out life as a musician, and I still consider myself primarily a musician. That's my first love. So I got into music and finally got into composition and arranging classes, which I would be up all night writing out my assignments after I had written the actual music in my head and at piano very quickly. And I thought there has got to be a better way to do this. And someday, somebody surely is going to have a program that you can play on a keyboard and it'll write out the music. And I started thinking about it and started making some sketches and some books, and I thought, I can do this. I can do this.
Trying to develop transcription software for his own needs, Farrand actually created a new technology or architecture upon which Finale is based. Once again collaborating with John Borovich, a music technology pioneer, the two computer wizards refined this core technology and coined its name, Enigma.
But Enigma is constructed such that we aren't tied to any particular platform, to any particular product whatsoever.
We determined that when we started Enigma that we weren't going to be concerned about hardware constraints at all. We were going to build it the way we thought it should be built. We were going to be true to the vision. If you can do that, then you can build something that's truly portable across hardware.
Farrand is outspoken about his philosophy on the creative process, a process that he strongly feels is based in a supreme engineer. This philosophy, Farrand believes, was key to Finale's creation.
First of all, I believe in a master architect. I believe in an architect who is there and who is not silent, who is rational and who is personal, who has revealed himself through history, and who desires to know each of his creation, and desires to help them, and has the necessary creativity and strength to help them in whatever they do. Therefore, we never tried to replace the human mind when we were creating Finale. Instead of trying to replace the human mind, we said what the human mind needs is tools to amplify its use.
But we want to provide a toolbox, or probably more appropriately a warehouse, that had all of the tools in it that the musician or the musical engineer required for the transcription, the printing, the playback, the editing, and of course, putting it up on the screen in standard music notation. And we knew the hardware would come along.
Musicians and composers who have come to understand and use the music notation system soon realize the vast warehouse of tools available to them in Finale. Tools whose use with unique and complex software requires learned skills through intensive study.
Finale is very extensive, and it has a number of tools, and they're deep tools. There's going to be a lot of time that they need to spend with it to learn how to use the tools, and it will pay them in the long run to do that.
For Christopher Yavolo, Finale's features have been particularly useful in his work as a film and television composer. Yavolo uses Finale's mass mover and note mover tools for speedy manipulations of his compositions.
Using the mass mover tool, just drag some ideas, those two measures, for example, and put them down here in the clarinet. And a copy of that melodic phrase will then appear down here in the clarinet. Now, I feel that the faster one can get one's ideas in a form that one can use, and then being able to deal with these ideas and fragment them and select subsets and little portions and move them around with a mouse as if you're painting on an orchestral canvas, the speed with which one can hear one's orchestrations, preview them, modify them, go back, make changes, the idea of linking the copies of material to the original source ideas on the palette, and then going back and just changing the idea on the palette and having it change throughout the orchestral score. One cannot overstress the amount of time this will save for people.
The most efficient way to proof a new musical composition, unsurprisingly, is by listening to it, rather than by looking at the printed score. A transcription program that lacks a playback capacity like Finale's is missing an important tool.
What's nice about it is it's a listening tool, too, so you can write something, try it out, and hear it right away if you've got the right MIDI gear to do it with.
The thing I love about Finale is that it works the way I do. I don't have to work the way it does. For example, there are 5 different ways to enter music. One of them is hyperscribe. Another one is the transcription tool. When I start adding tracks to existing material, I use the transcription tool. All I have to do is click, and I'm into the mode, and then I just turn around and play, and I can hear the previous tracks while I add the new one.
With less mechanical burden and a literal storehouse of useful tools and techniques, the notation system opens up endless opportunities to further enhance the creative work of the composer. Jim Romeo's composition, Finale Nights, utilized the many tools available in the new music software program.
When I started Finale Nights, I had a melodic idea that I'd worked out at the keyboard. Ordinarily, I'd have to write that down and start working with it that way. But with Finale, I'm just able to play it straight into the computer, and the program instantly notates it. I use the hyperscribe tool to do that. I just click on the tool, set the settings the way I want to set them, and for example, I'm selecting float quantizing, which allows me to swing my melody, and it will still notate it correctly. Just click on the screen and play it. Click on the screen, and there it is, in perfect notation exactly as I played it in. Now you're going to love this. When I was doing the string parts, all I had to do was use hyperscribe, just like this, put in the chords, and then all I need to do now is explode that into the full string orchestration. I select it, I say explode, I say OK, and then instantly on the screen, I've got it all laid out in the string parts just as you see here.
Well, I would use both explosion and implosion a lot. Now, I might go back at some point and want to make a piano reduced score out of some of this, grabbing different instruments. So I could grab, say, maybe the 4 trumpets and the 3 trombones, implode them back into two staves, so I could give it to a piano player to read, I could play it myself, or I can play back from those 2 staves and hear just those brass instruments isolated, instead of listening to the whole band and kind of fine-tune and say, well, maybe I should fix a note here or make it a little fatter here, you know.
For the experienced orchestrator, this is going to save hours of time because all you have to do is play in your voicings and it'll lay out the parts for you. For people who are inexperienced with orchestration, they just sit at the keyboard playing their favorite jazz voicings or their classical patterns, and it will instantly explode this music that they've played into full orchestral parts. And once you've exploded the music into all those parts, it's a simple matter to use Finale's part extraction feature to print out a set of parts and hand it to the players.
A lot of people I work with come in and they would prefer to work with charts. So this will allow me to instantly to print out something for them, a chart for them, and say, here, this is what I need you to play, and it saves me a lot of time in the studio.
As musicians tested and composers evaluated Finale's advanced music software tools, the Berklee School of Music became the site of the product's debut and warm reception before a gathering of the Boston Computer Society.
But it is the next, I think, step in the evolution of computer music programs, computer music software. I'll show you how I define the playback.
With a wide range of applications and an even wider range of music software users, there needs to be a communication link between those that created the technology and those who use it in their own creative process.
I'll just do a real simple example here.
Finale needs to grow into specific areas of use because music is very diverse in what you can do with it. So what we need is users who will use it and will come back and say, okay, in my field, this is useful, this is not as useful, but I need more of this and this and this and this.
The customer is crucial to us because they are the users. Every musician approaches music differently. And we made a recognition of that in the design. We tried to provide a number of input methods because not just one input method works for all tasks. So we want to develop a relationship with them, and that's part of our customer support philosophy. We are a company of musicians and engineers, but musicians first. We respect the art form. We respect that musician.
If we get a wide base of users that can send us suggestions, what we can do at that point is we can take those suggestions and categorize them. And using those categories, then we can spin products off the top of Finale that will have all the capabilities of Finale, but will be geared to specific markets with tools that are specifically geared to the things and the ways that those users want to use Finale.
The electronic age of music has certainly revolutionized all forms and types of music today. We've definitely come quite far, quite fast, just in the last few years since the creation of the synthesizer. But what about tomorrow and the next challenge for the world of electronic music?
I really think that someday there will be optical readers that can do the reverse. And that is look at sheet music and play something back. And that's when the educational loop will be complete. Because not only can you play something and see what it looks like, you can take something and see what it sounds like.
This all-pervading impact that the invention of the printing press had on text is the type of impact we're going to see Finale have on music. It will start with the composers and the publishers and the engravers, but then it will pervade out into other segments because money will be freed up, time will be freed up, people have more time to create, publishers will have more money to spend on promotion of new music.
Well, every musical period develops over a course of time, years, sometimes decades, but usually historians will look back and find a single defining event to say that's when the period began or ended. For example, 1750 is the death of Bach. It's the end of the Baroque period. I think that historians 50 years from now, 100 years from now, will look back on 1988, the introduction of Finale, and say that was this moment when a new period really began in music history.
I guess it's just about what the music industry was waiting for in many, many ways. In publishing, in playback, in recording. It's just a knockout.
With the program. I use another program and it just puts my program in the shade. It really does.
I was extremely impressed by the flexibility that this Finale software offers.